He didn't expect Christmas Eve to start with the cold sting of hunger and end with the warmth of a miracle. A barefoot boy, known only for being poor and out of place, stumbled upon a little girl sobbing on the frozen street, clutching a torn piece of ribbon. No one else stopped. Cars kept passing. She said she was lost, but no one would listen to either of them. That night, two strangers, one abandoned by circumstance, one abandoned by fear, crossed paths in a world that often saw color before kindness. What happened next would challenge everything people thought they knew about compassion and worth, and by dawn, hearts would change forever. 12-year-old Malik knew struggle like it was part of his name. Every morning in his small, drafty home on the edge of town, he wrapped his worn jacket tighter and told his little sister he'd bring back something for dinner after shining shoes downtown. His hands were small, but his heart, the kind that noticed people others ignored, made him older than his years. Still, in his neighborhood, kindness rarely shielded anyone from judgment. He'd gotten used to wary stares, to being followed in stores, to hearing people whisper as if poverty and the color of his skin were a crime. On that crisp Christmas Eve, while families filled their homes with warmth and laughter, Malik walked the bustling sidewalks, boots leaking, saving every coin. The air smelled of pine and roasted chestnuts, yet beneath the twinkling lights was that familiar chill, the kind that had nothing to do with winter. Down the block, he noticed a small figure standing alone, trembling beneath a street lamp. A little girl, lost and frightened. Malik hesitated, knowing how people looked at him when he tried to help. But something told him this night would be different. Something about that child and the silence that surrounded her would lead him into a moment the whole town would remember.
Malik's fingers were stiff from the cold when he stepped toward the little girl. Her cheeks were red, tear-streaked, and she held a small stuffed rabbit that looked almost as tired as he did. "You okay?" he asked softly, but she only stared back with wide, frightened eyes. Around them, the city hummed in a blur of tinsel and carols, yet no one seemed to notice two children alone on the curb. When Malik crouched to offer the girl his scarf, a voice broke through the air, sharp, suspicious. A man across the street was watching, then another. Someone muttered, "What's he doing with that kid?" Within seconds, whispers turned into pointed looks. Malik felt the weight of every stare pressing against him, as if invisible hands were ready to push him down. He stood up quickly, trying to explain that the girl was lost, but the words caught somewhere between fear and exhaustion. The girl tugged at his sleeve, saying she wanted her mother. Malik's chest tightened. He looked around for help, a store clerk, a police officer, anyone, but people avoided his eyes. Finally, a woman stepped forward, cradling her shopping bags like armor. "I saw him grab her," she said, uncertain but loud enough for others to hear. That was all it took. A man in uniform rushed over, one hand already near his belt. Malik froze, remembering the lessons his mother had whispered since he was small. Keep your hands visible, speak softly, don't make them afraid. The girl tried to explain. She kept saying he helped her, but the grown-ups weren't listening. Her small voice was drowned by assumptions that spoke faster than truth. As the crowd tightened, Malik's heart drummed like a warning. He explained again, words tumbling out too fast. He'd only tried to help. The girl was lost. The officer's eyes scanned him up and down, taking in the patched jacket, the dirt-scuffed shoes, the color of his skin. Malik felt stripped bare, seen, but not truly seen. Then, flashing lights painted the snow red and blue. A patrol car had pulled up, summoned by someone's call. The little girl wailed, clutching his hand, begging them not to take him. Malik could barely breathe through the panic rising in his chest. He wanted to tell them about his sister waiting at home, about the coins he'd saved in his pocket, about how he just wanted to do one good thing. But words were heavy things that night, and they sank before they could reach anyone's heart. The officer moved closer. Malik stepped back. For a second, time seemed to hold its breath. the snow drifting slower, the lights pulsing against the dark. Every sound melted except the girl's cries. Then someone shouted, "Get away from her!" and the air snapped. By the time Malik realized he was trembling, the truth no longer mattered. He was no longer a boy helping a child. To them, he was a threat in the wrong story. And as he stood there, surrounded by judgment disguised as concern, one thought burned through his fear. If kindness could be misunderstood as danger, what hope did truth have at all?
The officer's voice cracked through the air, sharp, commanding. "Step away from the girl." Malik froze. Snowflakes landed on his lashes, melting into tears he refused to shed. The little girl still held his hand, her tiny fingers trembling against his calloused ones. He whispered, "It's okay," though even he wasn't sure it was. The crowd edged closer, forming a wall of judgment, phones raised like mirrors to his fear. Then came the shove, harsh, quick. Malik stumbled into the snow as rough hands pulled the girl away. She screamed his name, her small voice slicing through the cold, but no one cared to listen. The officer's knee pressed into his back, the cold biting into his skin through the thin fabric of his jacket. Malik gasped for air, his words muffled by ice and injustice. No matter what he said, "She was lost, I was helping," truth dissolved in the noise. The little girl broke free, darting toward a woman running down the street, a frantic mother who had been searching for her daughter for hours. The moment she saw Malik pinned to the ground, confusion spread across her face. The crowd watched as pieces of realization flickered in her eyes. She rushed forward, clutching her daughter, and shouted, "He helped her! That boy helped her!" Everything stopped. The air cracked with silence, thick and guilty. The officer's weight hesitated, the whispers of the crowd shrinking into shame. Malik's heart thudded as he waited for someone, anyone, to speak an apology. None came. Instead, they pulled him up slowly, brushing snow off his shoulders as if erasing evidence of what they'd done. The mother turned to him, tears in her eyes, voice trembling with relief and sorrow. "You saved her," she whispered. Malik nodded, unsure what to feel: relief, anger, exhaustion. As the flashing lights dimmed behind him, one memory anchored deep in his mind: how quickly good intentions could be buried under fear, and how, sometimes, being innocent still wasn't enough. When the flashing lights faded and the whispering crowd dispersed, Malik was left standing in the quiet ruin of what had just happened. His knees still ached from the icy pavement. His hands still shook, even as the mother thanked him through tears. She tried to explain, tried to defend him, but for Malik, the damage had already been done. He realized that the people who had feared him didn't even know his name. To them, he was just a shadow that didn't belong under the glow of Christmas lights. That night, he walked home slower than ever, his worn boots leaving traces in the snow that the wind quickly smoothed away, like the way the world erases moments that make it uncomfortable. When he reached his small house, his sister ran to him, asking what had taken so long. Malik didn't have the heart to tell her that sometimes doing the right thing can still make people think you don't matter. Days later, the story spread through the town, how a poor boy had saved a lost girl. People spoke of a Christmas miracle, but Malik's heart stayed heavy, because before the miracle, they had seen him as a menace. It wasn't the miracle they remembered, it was the part they chose to forget. Years passed, and Malik grew older, but he would never forget the feeling of that cold asphalt against his cheek, the taste of fear and shame that came with being judged before being known. That night became his lesson and his mission. Because Christmas lights fade, crowds move on, and stories get rewritten. But one truth endures: kindness shouldn't need proof. Humanity shouldn't need permission. The question that remains is simple:
How many more miracles will it take before compassion stops looking suspicious?